Next on Binge with Baldrick.
Here we go, way up in the sky with the Aurora Guy.
This is Binge with Baldrick, the interesting show for curious minds and hungry hearts. Here now, a guy who's lived his entire life with artificial intelligence, Thomas Baldrick.
Greetings, friends. Much love and gratitude for being here. I am Thomas Baldrick. I woke up today. Life is good. I am blessed to be Julian Baldrick's dad, and I'm blessed that Binge with Baldrick is building momentum. So would you do me a quick solid? One finger would be a huge or two huge helping hands. Just hit the subscribe button, say on YouTube. That would help the algorithm get to know us. Thank you kindly. I will earn your support. Now, as far as the sky goes, this is the spectacular show of all shows. So let's go. The absolutely amazing Aurora Borealis. You may have enjoyed the recent episodes I've done raving about it, or as I say, geeking out over it. So for here, I was trying to think of an analogy to use to describe it rather than just another adjective. So here's what I came up with. Are you ready? The beautiful Aurora Borealis is like the Halle Berry of the Earth's atmosphere. I know some might go with the heartthrob Jonathan Bailey. I'm not familiar with him. Older folks might say Marilyn Monroe or maybe Paul Newman or Robert Redford. I checked with my kiddo and heard the younger ones might shout out Sydney Sweeney. And I know Bad Bunny is doing the upcoming Super Bowl halftime show. So who would you say? We can kick that around in social media. By any name, I remain head over heels in love with the Aurora. It's only been a month since my last experience, and every day I'm craving another. I'm craving the next. But today I'm super excited to share my interview with the Aurora Guy. His name is Vincent Ledvina. He's a PhD student at the University of Alaska Fairbanks Geophysical Institute. Really smart guy, really nice guy, and so are the members of his Aurora chasing team. These people are out every night in the Alaska cold, hoping to make dreams come true for people who want to see and or experience what may be Mother Nature's most unique magic show. Quick note, if you are watching the video version of this episode, I've added this green effect. So this will give you a heads up whenever Vincent is going into full science mode. But don't worry, he's really good at breaking things down and making them easy. I just thought something like this would not only match the Aurora color, but help give you a heads up to focus. If you are listening to Binge with Baldrick, I can tell you don't want to miss out on the breathtaking photography of Vincent and his partner. I call her Maya the Magnificent Hartwigson, whose handle online is We Were the Tide. Maya took that photo of me. Anyway, if you want to see their work, watch the video version later, or I'll be sharing more in social media. My final point, let me say it before you do. Shut up, Baldrick. Time for the Aurora Guy.
My name is Vincent Ledvina. I am a space physics PhD student at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Some people call me the Aurora Guy. I love to chase the Aurora. I'm a professional Aurora chaser, and I live up here in Fairbanks, Alaska. I liken Aurora chasing to fishing. Have low expectations but high hopes. And I just love this old adage, just expectation is the thief of joy. If you go up here with really high expectations for a huge Aurora, and you may be disappointed. Go out expecting nothing, and then if you get something, then you'll just be so happy and just overjoyed.
Of all the Aurora chasers that I've researched for this, you were the only one that I contacted because I thought this guy's into it. He cares about people having a great experience, and the fact that you were a student. All those things aligned. Why I just think if you're coming here to do this, you, my friend, are the perfect guy.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. People always ask, how did you get into this? For me, it was when I was 3 years old, and this was back in 2003 during the October Halloween storms. So there were these big geomagnetic storms, like a solar storm, And I was living in the Twin Cities in Minnesota at the time and looking out over my parents' bay windows. And I remember seeing these weird dancing lights in the sky. And I was like, what the heck are those? And they just mesmerized me. And my parents did not know what they were. And so from that moment, I would say I was just so obsessed with space. And then I got into photography when I was in my teens. I took my first Aurora photo when I was 16 years old, and that was in high school. And I didn't even have a license, so I was dragging out my parents to the middle of nowhere in western Wisconsin. They were like, what are we doing? And then I was really unsuccessful at first, but then I realized I need to bury myself in the science and really just hunker down and look at this. And then that was right as I was going to college. I went to school at the University of North Dakota, and UND was a great place because it was kind of in the middle of nowhere, which for me was nice because it was near dark skies. I could practice all my photography and aurora chasing skills. And so there I just kind of honed my craft. I finally got a car up there and I could drive to these places, like these dark sites. I started taking photos and posting them online. So I didn't start doing social media till 2021. One of my photos was reposted by the University of North Dakota's official Instagram. And people were coming up to me asking me, hey, are you that Aurora guy that took that photo? And then all my friends started teasing me saying, you're the Aurora guy now. And at first I was like, I don't want to be the Aurora guy. There are plenty of other talented people. But then I was kind of looking back and I was like, most of my life has been chasing the Aurora. I'm just going to go ahead and embrace it. So that's where this Aurora guy name came from.
Love it.
And I took a gap year, moved up to Alaska in 2022, and then throughout all this time, I've been doing internships. I've been sort of immersing myself in the research world. Started at UAF in 23, and this is now my third year of my PhD. And over the course of that time, I've seen a lot of Aurora, but now I want to share that experience with other people. So I founded a tour company, and I have a couple guides who are both my friends. One of them is my roommate. And I also run photography workshops up here in Fairbanks. I love this stuff. I mean, right. I'm constantly on the pulse of just watching it. And I hope that everyone else can, at least, maybe they're not as obsessed as I am with the Aurora, but at least they can kind of, when they're up here, understand why. And they can understand that by seeing the Aurora, just having that experience.
What is the experience like for you?
First time I really saw a huge Aurora, like one that was all around me, overhead, basically horizon to horizon, was March 5th of 2022. And I remember that night because it was such a crazy experience. I was up in Fort Yukon, Alaska, middle of nowhere. It's above the Arctic Circle. University of Alaska Fairbanks has a rocket range. It's like one of the only university-owned rocket ranges in the world. We launched these rockets from Poker Flat Research Range, and they study the Aurora by actually flying through it. So anyways, I was just out kind of walking around because I'm in the middle of nowhere and there's nothing to do because there's no internet or cell service. So I'm just walking around at night, just kind of enjoying, the night sky. And then I could see the Aurora kind of off to the southern horizon. So it was pretty strong that night because it was all the way to the south. And all of a sudden, it just kind of erupted into these huge pillars. And I could see it physically like moving from the southern horizon overhead. And it was just overtaking the entire sky. It got so bright and like the ground was visibly glowing. And I just watched it and it was just so amazing. Like it was just so overwhelming, and it was overwhelming physically because it was all around and it was filling my entire vision, but also emotionally because it was just so beautiful. And, I definitely shed a few tears, which instantly froze because it was like minus 30. But, just also being there in the middle of nowhere, helping out with this project. And like, that night too, we launched the rocket. So it was like this huge culmination, like this amazing moment. So I would say when you're out there and you're looking at the Aurora, definitely just try and put everything away. Just look at it, try to enjoy the experience. Whoever is listening, if you're, spiritual or, if you're religious, I definitely felt something when I was looking at that display. And I felt similar things since then when I'm looking at the Aurora, like some greater connection is happening.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
It looks impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It just looks impossible, and yet it's so real. And it's so fleeting.
Right. Yeah, these things can happen for like 5 or 10 minutes and then just completely disappear. Yeah.
All right, so you and I can geek out for years here, sitting here with no food or water, but we do have microphones, cameras, lights, and we have an audio mixer. However, simplify it, would you, sir?
Yes.
What is the Aurora Borealis? How does it happen? What is it?
Yep. So what you're looking at is essentially a giant neon lamp in the atmosphere. So a neon lamp works by you plug it into the wall. There's gas in a tube. You send electricity through it and it glows. Great. The aurora is kind of like the same way, except for the electricity comes from outer space and the gases are in our upper atmosphere. And the different colors that you see in the aurora are caused by different gases being excited. So there are like these chemical reactions taking place. So the most common color is green. That's oxygen, atomic oxygen at about 100 kilometers. So 100 kilometers means it's way above all the terrestrial weather, the clouds, even like airplanes. So it needs to be clear to see the aurora. It's happening really high in Earth's atmosphere. There's green, and then below that, if these particles, so it's actually this sort of shower of charged particles like electrons, which is the same as electricity basically, coming in from outer space. If they have enough energy, they can go all the way down to this layer of nitrogen, and that can glow like purple or pink. So during really strong auroras, you might see like a shimmering lower border. Sometimes people call that the nitrogen fringe. Above the green is red. That's also caused by oxygen, just at a higher altitude. So you have sort of the red, you have the green, you have the pink on the very bottom. There's also a blue color that's also produced by nitrogen that kind of gets mixed in everything. So you can have these primary colors, but then also mixing. So you can see like oranges and yellows and purples and things like that. And the aurora itself on a global scale takes place in two donut-shaped sort of rings around Earth's geomagnetic poles. So there's the Aurora Borealis, which is at the northern hemisphere, or the northern lights. You also have a southern lights, Aurora Australis, and they're typically mirrored. So if you see a big sort of burst of auroral activity in the northern hemisphere, penguins in Antarctica are seeing a similar burst of activity, which is kind of cool. And so all the energy from the aurora comes from Earth's magnetic shield. It's called the magnetosphere, and that's generated by molten and solid motions in Earth's core, extends out to the surface. Earth's magnetic field is about the strength of a fridge magnet. We use it on our phones every single day to drive us around, but it also extends into outer space and forms a protective bubble around Earth. And the sun is constantly emitting energy in the form of solar wind, kind of like the steam off of a cup of coffee. Mm-hmm. If you imagine the liquid inside the cup is the sun and it's really hot interior and atmosphere, the steam is just that atmosphere escaping into outer space.
Okay.
That carries with it energy, and Earth's magnetic shield kind of protects us from that like a rock in a stream of water. And it's shaped like a comet tail. So the side that's facing the sun is compressed. The side that's not facing the sun is kind of extended out. Usually that solar wind just kind of goes right by, doesn't interact with Earth. But if the magnetic fields are oriented oppositely, like you're bringing two opposite ends of bar magnets together, you can get them to couple, and the energy can flow in down into Earth's magnetic shield into the aurora. So that's a lot, but everything starts with the sun, and it's this whole chain of events from the sun's atmosphere to the surface of the Earth. And what you're seeing is the aurora is like the manifestation of all that happening. It's like the final step.
If someone really wants to experience the aurora, like me, no disrespect to Minnesota or North Dakota, I want to be in the front row.
Yeah.
So Fairbanks seems to be one of those places around the planet that is the front row.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And what's great about Fairbanks, so I mentioned these like two donut-shaped auroral ovals. Mm-hmm. Those will kind of rest around like the Fairbanks latitude, or like Churchill, Manitoba, Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, Iceland, Northern Norway, Sweden, Finland. So without any kind of enhancement in like the solar wind or like the energy flowing in, these auroral ovals will just always be over Fairbanks. So even if the space weather is really quiet, like there's no solar storm, there's like nothing happening, you can see aurora basically overhead, which is really cool. So, you can get really nice shows down in the lower 48, but you have to wait for a geomagnetic storm to occur. They don't happen all the time, right? Otherwise, nobody would be coming up here to Alaska. Also, you're typically looking at the aurora from the side. It's usually not overhead, and it looks a little bit different because you're looking at it from the side. Instead of it being like rivers of green light, right overhead, which are really dynamic and moving and super bright, you're usually looking at like a dull or, diffuse kind of glow to the north, maybe some pillars kind of rippling around. It can be really dramatic, but it's definitely different than what you can experience up in Fairbanks. So, I always tell people who say that they've seen it because they've seen it in Minnesota or Wisconsin or wherever, I just tell them, just try and take a trip to Alaska and tell me what you think. Because you might think that you've seen it all, but I think it does really benefit from being in that front row seat, and being up here and seeing it right overhead is a sort of super unique experience.
Yeah. I told you, and I didn't lie, it was the truth when I said it. I said, I'm going to work on a list of questions and then I'll send it to you. Well, in front of the cameras and microphones, I never did that because I knew I wouldn't be able to follow it. Emotionally, I couldn't follow it. Mentally, couldn't follow it. That I just knew this would happen.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that, like, again, I call you my hero because it's true. One of the things I should have asked you earlier when we were talking about the business is explain your tour. So what happens? Why you? Why go with the Aurora Guy? How do you do things?
Yep.
What will people be purchasing, if you will?
Okay, so first of all, why would you want to take an Aurora tour? Because you might come up here and think, okay, I'm just going to rent a car. I'm just going to do it myself. And there is some truth to that, right? But now you have this rental car, which probably doesn't have great winter tires. You've never driven it before. It's a totally new city. And now you're supposed to be looking at space weather data. You're supposed to be staying up until 2 or 3 a.m. You're supposed to be watching webcams. It's basically impossible. I mean, people can do it, right? But, I think it's just sort of the realistic expectation is that when you're up here, you're going to be tired the first couple nights. And it's also going to be really hard to stay up. And it's really important to stay awake because the Aurora typically gets the strongest around 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. We have these things called substorms, which are like these big bursts of auroral activity. You can't necessarily predict them, but you have to be monitoring the sky. You can watch for patterns in the aurora. If you know how to follow those, maybe you can get a little bit of a sense, like a 10 or 15 minute heads up. But you kind of have to be looking all the time. And those typically don't happen until like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. if it's a quiet night. So, for somebody to come up here and say, okay, I'm going to be doing all that, great, have fun. But also it's not safe either if you think you can do it and then you're out really far from town. You've never been on that road before. You don't have your sort of, bearings and things like that. Maybe your car is just not equipped for the really frigid cold. Like it's going to be minus 40 next week. And I don't know. I wouldn't trust a rental car at minus 40. I would never turn it off at least. But it's just safer to hire somebody who can take you out, who knows how to watch for these patterns, who's able to stay awake, who can pick you up from your hotel, drop you back off. You can sleep in the car. Your guide will tell you when to go out. They'll take photos of you so you have a record of that you saw it. It's fun to brag to friends and family and stuff.
Right.
And who will be out there and make sure that you're witnessing the best part of the night. That's kind of the point of buying an Aurora tour, is that you have somebody to show you what's going on. You can do this a really cheap way. You can just pick somebody up and drop them back off at 2 a.m. without any care in the world about the science or what's going on. But my guide, Maya and Levi, I have two guides who are both my friends I've known for many years. They both know the science of the Aurora because they listen to me and they've looked it up themselves. And they're also just as passionate as I am about all this stuff. They moved up to Alaska for the Aurora, just like I did. So some of these tour companies, they just have guides that are flown in from the lower 48 that are just collecting a paycheck at the end of the day, right? And, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, a lot of people may get a good experience doing that, but I think it's nice to have a guide who really knows what they're looking at and who, is excited about the Aurora in a way that also excites you. I think it's all about the customer experience, the guest experience, right? You don't want to show up and say, okay, I'm going to be dropping you off at 3 a.m. It's 9 p.m. now. Let's hope we get something. It's like, hey, I'm picking you up. My goal is to give you the best of the Aurora that happens tonight. I can't control what's going to happen, but I'm going to try my best. I'm going to get you underneath that Aurora. I'm going to take your photos, and I'm going to give you the best experience possible. Maya and Levi both have their own vehicles. They're just like SUVs. I also think it's nice having smaller groups. Some of these big Aurora tour companies will, bus in like two or three large, like school bus sized, groups of people. And I don't know. I was just talking about earlier about having that intimate experience with the Aurora, with nature. It allows you to sort of connect with that higher power or just whatever's going on in the universe that you sort of believe in. You can do that with a really small group. You can kind of go off on your own and you can just be on a frozen lake all by yourself and just sort of have that experience.
Let me take you back for two reasons. One, because I think it's smart. Two, because it proves that I'm actually listening to you. But you talked about fishing and the analogy with fishing, which I love and I resonate with. So you don't go deep sea fishing by yourself. You don't rent a boat and go out. You go out with a captain and a crew that know what they're doing, that has a fish finder, that has history and experience and knows where to look for fish. So it's not just take you to see it, but they know where to look for it.
Right.
So that sounds pretty credible to me. And we seem to be at a place in life as a planet with all the division,
Yeah.
with all the angst, and with all the stress people feel, that seeking experiences is something that seems to have taken hold.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I think that experiences, I value that more over, making a lot of money or, other forms of success. I think just experiencing the world and what it has to offer is sort of the point of life. I mean, that's just my philosophy, right? It's like I was put here on this earth and I'm going to see what there is to see and just gain as much perspective as possible. So part of that for me is the aurora. And part of that, I think for other people too, is like, I want to see nature's most beautiful light show. I want to have that experience being underneath the northern lights, seeing it just exploding overhead, and like just how amazing the world is. Like, it's just so cool that nature can do this. I mean, it's just like seeing a huge waterfall or like seeing a volcano erupt, right? It's just so like awe-inspiring, and it just sort of puts things into perspective that, whatever you're dealing with in your sort of day-to-day work life, for example, really means nothing when it comes to what the world, has to offer. Like, it just sort of puts things into perspective for me. Like, I still go out aurora chasing all the time, even though I'm a full-time student. I try and go out if I have no Zoom meetings at 8 a.m. the next day or something. I try and go out because I'm still experiencing the aurora. Like, every night is a new experience. Even though there are these patterns and you can study it and you can understand the science, every night is something new. Like Maya, she's seen the aurora hundreds of times. And even though, she knows the science too, but this is what I'm studying, she can tell me better than I can about what the aurora is going to do, just because she's learned its behavior just to a T. So it's almost like, getting to know a wild animal or like something like that. And I just think it's so cool. Even if you only seen it once, right? You may not have that level of sort of deep experience or like that sort of familiarity. Just knowing that it exists and seeing the beast sort of up front and personal, I think is worth it. And yeah, it's just such a unique thing to come up to Alaska. Like, a lot of people, this is their first time in Alaska coming to see the aurora. It's a different place, as you've seen. I think that people just kind of beat to their own drum up here. They're kind of just doing their own thing. So it's just fun to be in Fairbanks where everyone's kind of got that independent spirit.
So you're in a unique place in life, geographically, academically. In studying space weather, what does your future look like? Is it clear skies, or is it still cloudy and you don't know what it's going to be?
I think it's cloudy and I don't know what it's going to be, but it's not like a rain cloud. It's like, it's like a good kind of cloud. I don't know where that analogy was going, but I don't know what I'm going to do because there are so many things I want to do. And that's my
Good
problem.
problem to have.
Yeah, exactly. That's my problem. So, and it's interesting because people say, what can you do with space weather? And so what I'm looking at right now is either becoming a professor, teaching. I love to teach online through social media. I, have blog articles and things like that where I tell people like what a substorm is, how to plan a trip. I have ebooks, things like that. I just love to share the knowledge. Mm-hmm. I also like the fact that space weather is really practical. It actually can affect people. It can affect society. So if you have a really big space weather event, like a geomagnetic storm, not only can you get super cool auroras, but you can also get power grid fluctuations. You can get issues with GPS, and that affects people every single day. But also it can really affect like critical assets like that, for example, like our military has. So there's also like a national security sort of angle to space weather. There's also the policy side. Space weather is just like regular weather in that a lot of the directives and the funding comes from the federal government. And so like there's the Space Weather Prediction Center, which is part of NOAA. There's NASA that studies space weather and monitors space weather. So a lot of the future of what space weather and how our research looks and how our monitoring looks, the different missions that are going to be going up, that comes down from the top, from the White House or from policymakers. So that's something I'm interested in. I want to get my PhD for sure. That's definitely going to happen in the next couple of years. But after that, I could just kind of run with the Aurora Guy thing. I love what I'm doing here with just posting on social media, and people love it. It gets people excited. I like it because it gets me excited, and I get in this flow state all the time when I'm monitoring things and I'm just looking at all the data. I'm getting excited. So there's a lot of opportunities and different paths that I could go down.
Where we're going with space travel,
yeah,
it seems like working in space weather, you would be on the cutting edge of perhaps something significant.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't even mention that, but I think there was something that just came out like in the news say that they want to have a crewed space mission to Mars in the next 10 years. I mean, they keep saying this, but like this is from Trump or whatever. But those people in that capsule have to worry about space weather because when you're on the ground, you're shielded by the atmosphere. Great. When you're in space, you're no longer shielded by the atmosphere, so there's more things that could affect you. You still have Earth's magnetosphere though. But when you're out traveling between planets or going to the moon, now you're outside of Earth's magnetosphere. Now you're really exposed, right? So, it's going to be important that we have people monitoring space weather for the different crewed missions that are going out, but also as more companies are launching things into space, you have Starlink. There were some situations where they launched Starlink satellites into a geomagnetic storm, which caused them to come back down. That wasn't very good. It's not just Starlink now, though. You have Amazon that wants to send up huge constellations. There's Chinese companies that want to do the same thing. You also have talks of putting AI data centers in space. I have no idea what the space weather implications of that are because if you have little radiation like charged particles, those can interfere with electronics. So imagine having like the super sensitive AI components and things in like these big servers and stuff in space. That's, to me, that seems super susceptible to space weather. So, there's a lot of challenges, but it also means for me that I'm not worried about my job going away anytime soon. Because,
Right.
Because there's enough interest in space and anything that goes in space is affected by space weather.
Excellent. Anything you would like to add, sir?
I think the only thing I want to add is that if people want to reach out to me for trip planning, if they have questions about the Aurora, I get a lot of joy from helping people. So if people want to hit me up, that'd be awesome.
That's why I hit you up. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're a fascinating human being, and I'm grateful to have connected with you. I mean that.
Thank you. Same.
Pretty cool stuff, huh? If you are anxious or curious about going to see the Aurora show under the Alaskan skies, all you need is a visit to theauroraguy.com. Vincent's website has all his contact information, and as he said, and I can attest, he does like to help people. Make sure you tell him Binge with Baldrick sent you, and he'll send me an ice cube for every referral, but you can only mention Binge with Baldrick after you show some love and hit the subscribe button. I can promise you more great episodes are in the works, another one coming next Tuesday. I'm Thomas Baldrick. Until next time, Godspeed, my friends. Go Birds.